wanted to do something different. Instead of teaching while I paint, I wanted to go back afterwards and just kind of explain what I'm doing at certain parts. Especially since this was a commission piece, I want to be locked in. Now, to do a sun, all you have to do is just have something circular, trace it, and that's going to give you a good starting point. I'm blending out the edges, but I don't want to mess with the middle of it. I want to keep the sun as bright as possible. That way I can kind of tamper out and go darker, darker, darker afterwards. Now that I got the yellows all sorted out, I added in the bright red, kind of let that fade out a little bit more, just continuously blending colors. And then I'm gonna add the least little bit of Prussian blue to my alizarin crimson, makes a nice little purplish lavender color. That way I can have dark from the left and then of course lighter towards the center. I'm just gonna keep working that out throughout the whole entire painting, just constantly blending. Just want to make sure there's no brush strokes, make it look like a nice little transition from dark to light, light to dark. Now that I got everything blended, I'm gonna go ahead and start adding clouds into the picture. All I'm doing is putting a little bit of paint on my fan brush and just drawing in some nice little designs. I want the sky colors to match my clouds, so I'm gonna go with the light color and then slowly work into my dark ones. All I'm doing here is fluffing up the clouds and then gently blending across to kind of hypnotize them. I want to add a little bit of highlight on these clouds, especially since they're close to the sun. So that's where you'll see me going into my white, my titanium white and the cad yellow, kind of mix them on the brush. I'm just going to touch just a little bit. The color can kind of get away from you. Right there, you'll notice that I had too much thinner on my brush from when I cleaned my brush off. So I went ahead, wiped it off, and then just restart the process again. I'm just going to put some color on the clouds and then slightly blend them afterwards. I don't want to blend too much because then that dark color is going to go into my sunlight and then it's just going to look kind of silly. Ran out of my alizarin crimson, so I added some to the palette, mixed that with the bright red. That way it's not just a pure one color. And just gonna add some space again in between my clouds. I want the color to expand through and through. And then I'm adding some yellows into it as well. That way it's like a nice blending effect. I don't want to have just one color across. I want to have multitude of colors. And obviously as the color goes away, it's gonna get darker. So I want to kind of range my cloud colors in the same way, going with that orangey color, then the red and the crimson, and then later on I'll be throwing in a little bit of that violet purplish type hue color at the very end. Again, just fluffing these clouds, hypnotizing them just a little bit. I want to blend them a lot just to make sure that they kind of look a little faded and far away in the distance. Also too, just making sure that my color, there isn't like any spot where you could tell where one color starts and the next one ends. That's why this painting required me to do a lot of blending, a lot of cleaning of the brush. You also notice a lot of jumps in the video. I edited out a lot of the cleaning because, like I said, it made the video was almost over an hour long, and by doing this, I cut a good amount of time off. So here, adding that purple color, I'm going to fade that out as well. Just fluffing, hypnotizing, going across. Here I'm going ahead and mixing up some mountain color. I usually use more of a blue hue for these type of paintings, but this one I wanted to make it a little more red and crimsony, so I added some bright red to my mix. I'm just laying in some mountain shapes, making sure that they're different in heights. You always want to make sure that you don't put all three of them at the same height. That way they look like three just basic pyramids at that point. I'm wiping away the extra paint, making sure that it's super thin. That way whenever I add my highlight and low lights onto a mountain, the paint can actually break and do its thing. I'm mixing out the bottom of the base. That way it's easier to make a misty effect later on. My highlight color is just a mix of crimson, white, and a little bit of that lavender color that we put in the sky. Putting the knife barely on the canvas and just allowing it to break across the mountains. That's the little holes that you see in the mountain. That's how you know that you're doing a good job on your mountains right there. That way, if it looks like you're icing a cake, that means you're putting too much pressure. You need to lighten up on it, scrape it away, start all over, and get into it. For my shadow color, I just really wanted to highlight the crimson colors, so made them real dark crimson, a little bit of that sky color. And again, you just want light pressure, pull anywhere you think that there'd be a ridge in your mountain, add that shadow, and it makes it really pop off on your canvas. It really makes that good little 3D effect. You just want to vary your colors going back and forth between your highlight and your low lights. Here I'm tapping the base, that way I can create that misty effect. You just want to tap at the angle of your mountains, lift gently up, and then go ahead and scrape across. Here I'm adding in a bunch of mini little trees. I'm using that same mountain color. Use a lot of paint for this. Chisel your brush and just go straight in a down motion. I do this and then I go behind it, and I want to end up adding in all the spaces where it kind of looks like there's too much space. It kind of looks like fence posts almost. So you just want to make sure that you add a lot of trees. That way the forest looks real full right here. Little trick right here, so you could add some branches and twigs and things like that in the background. It says take a little bit of that light color and just softly stroke up on it. It's an easy way to add a lot of bark, a lot of tree limbs, a lot of different little indications back there. Here I'm mixing up a couple different colors on my brush, mainly the yellow, because I have so much blue on my brush as is from the mountain color. It's going to make a pretty little green color. And I'm just tapping the corner of the brush just to make these little nice grassy areas. Uh, the fan brush isn't really working fast enough for me, so I went ahead, tapped in my 1-inch brush, that way I can go in there, and I just find it's a little bit easier for me to work with, especially if I want to control my pressure to make the dark on the light side, and then to make my darkers on the left side, and then to make my lighters on the right side. Paint wasn't really sticking, so I'll just add the least little bit of thinner. Right there, my baby's shaking the camera. Like I said, it's so much easier for me to do these videos where I edit them afterwards with the voiceover, because during there's so much chaos going into my house, going around in my house. I have 3 dogs and I have a tiny toddler running around, so there's a lot of music playing. Sometimes there's some crying and whatnot, so it's more pleasant on y'all ears for me to do it this way. Just going in and varying my colors, making sure that I have nice bright colors on the right and darker colors on the left side. Here I want to add a little bit of land indication, so I'm just going into my Van Dyke Brown, and I'm just going to scrub the edges of my land. Here you can kind of add your characteristics that you want, different peninsulas, different little areas and such. Here I want to add a little bit of reflection, so you just take your 1 inch or your 2 inch brush and you just pull straight down. If you don't have enough color to pull down, all you have to do is add that dark color to your brush and put a lot of pressure on there, pull straight down, and then go across like you hypnotizing your clouds, and it just makes you get a good little water effect going. Here I'm trying to make a little highlight color for my dirt, and I'm just trying to vary the colors around a little bit. I didn't want to make it too bright to where it looks like it's shining bright, but all I'm doing is just put a little bit of white in the browns, my burnt colors, Van Dyke brown, and just going and grazing across that land. I gotta add a disclaimer for this brush that I'm about to use right now. I absolutely hate this brush. I ended up throwing it away. But what I'm doing here is trying to add in my waterfall feature. I just want to put dark color or bright color right where I want it to be. The problem with this brush, the bristles are really soft. I do not recommend using that one at all. You'll notice that I threw that into the trash, and now I'm going into my other fan brush. I can't remember the brand right offhand. I think it's like a GAC Gacker, I believe it's called. But they're really good fan brushes. I highly recommend using them. That other brush I got from a set that I found on Amazon, it come with a 2-inch brush, 1-inch brush, and a set of palette knives, which they all work perfectly fine. I used the 2-inch brush a lot in this video, but as far as the fan brush, it's really too soft. But anywho, here I'm just adding some splashing where my waterfall is going to crash at. I'm taking my knife, and all I'm doing is just kind of drawing across, making a lot of water lines, try to show where the water's kind of flowing into its drop-off point. Here, just kind of expanding that water. Again, you can have a general idea that you want to go with. And the cool thing about the oil paintings is that you can literally just change it as you go. If you don't like something, you scrape it off, wipe it down, then just restart. This style is very forgiving, uh, unlike acrylics where it dries super fast. This, like I said, you're constantly changing the paint. You can constantly move the paint. That's why I really do like oil paintings. Uh, they're just oil medium in general. Making a big decision here on where I want my rocks to be at. I know I wanted to put rocks on the right side and on the left side. The last time I did this painting, or did this composition rather, my rocks I found were a little lackluster. They're a little too round. They almost just look like they just kind of sat there. So this one I want to make sure that I had one rock that really protruded, and then the second one to have it a little more pointed out. That way I can like show different planes for the rocks. You notice that I'm using my paintbrush to kind of add in the detail of like how the rocks are, like where the flat parts are and then where the cliffs may be at. I thought I wanted rocks at the bottom of the painting, but again, you can always change up with oils, especially. Um, you're gonna notice in a little bit, I really didn't care for the little bitty rocks that I put on the bottom, so I'm gonna end up blending them out and just make it part of the water. Like I said, you constantly can change things. You're not dedicated to anything. You don't have to be committed. Constantly change it. If you like something, you keep it. You don't like it, change it. That easy. Just adding some light colors on top of the water. I really want the water to look really dynamic in this painting. So I'm kind of thinking to myself where the sun would actually hit some of the water. Where would it be dark at? Where would it be light at? But at the same time, I don't want to overwork it because then it just looks flat. It's very easy for waterfalls and water in general to get away from you. I'm adding some splashing effect. That way it looks like it's crashing against the rocks. I'm going to go back in later and add some foamy things to that. You can take that brush and real lightly just stroking across. You can kind of add that water features without if you don't want to use the knife. Like I said, I just want to put a little bit of indication of blue here and there. That way the water doesn't just look constantly pink all the way through. You know, the water is moving, so obviously it's going to have different changes of color throughout. All I'm doing here is just playing side to side just to kind of make that water look like it's moving. On the right side, I don't have to worry so much about how I mess with that because I'm adding a bunch of trees as well on the left side. But like I said, if it looks like a mess, don't worry. A lot of that's going to get covered up. Ran out of some titanium white, so added that to the palette. Using a smaller palette this time. Usually I use a great big one, but I want to use something a little different. Tapping just the corner of my 2-inch brush and just dabbing in some spots for some like kind of little foamy, crashy things. I'm going to blend that a little bit, make like a mist effect. Kind of figuring out where I want to put my trees at. Just talking to my wife in the background. My wife is a very good painter as well. She does acrylic paintings. She does all kinds of dog portraits and stuff like that. She rather do animals, mostly dogs and cats and stuff like that. So, like I say, she's super super talented. Way better than me. Yeah, I probably would say I'd be like a purple belt in painting, where she's definitely a black belt. Just adding in some water lines, kind of cleaning up my edges and everything. Just kind of, like I say, adding them highlights where I think it would be at, and just kind of varying my colors, playing across here and there. I'm blending away this paint because I'm kind of realizing that I'm going to have trees along there, and I didn't want to have a thick blue paint and then trying to paint over it. That would just kind of, it would guarantee that I'd be mud mixing at that point. So I'm adding a highlight color. All I did was add some white with my browns and just graze over the top of those rocks. And then I'm kind of pulling straight down. That way, again, it adds that cliff effect by doing that. Like I say, very light pressure. The quicker the better I find for these as well. If you try to move slow, I find that's when you kind of make the mistakes. Just kind of let your knife move. Whatever the canvas wants to take from you, it will. Work with the canvas. Don't work against it. Don't try to make effects happen. Just kind of let it happen. Again, we got happy accidents all the time. Sometimes we work with them. Sometimes you just gotta do something else with them. Not a problem though. Didn't like the texture on the left side, so I'm just kind of varying my paints and just, again, just letting the knife work. Whatever the canvas and the knife wants to do, I just let it. Just kind of stroke across there a few times, let it get a little bit of that breaking features, and we can move on from there. Here I'm adding a little bit of white paint to the rocks. That way it looks like the water's crashing up against the rocks. And then I'm just kind of adding a little bit in the center of the waterfall where it meets together. I wanted to add a little more of that, like that V shape to it. That way it actually looks a little more rounded. And then I'm adding some darker color on the bottom. That way, obviously color will be darker the closer it gets to you. So I didn't want to have it just look like a dead color. So I'm just kind of mixing in some dark colors at the very bottom, adding some dark splashy things as well, just a little bit of shadow here and there, and then just going to blend it up a little bit. So for the trees, I'm going to end up adding a good dark color, just adding a little bit of sap green to it as well. I'm drawing a straight line, and the key for these is just to use the corner of the brush. You start on one side, tap the middle, go to the right, tap the middle, go to the left. Just kind of drawing Z's the whole way through. Don't be scared to reload your brush. Use a lot of paint for this. Okay, light pressure. You just kind of push. At the very bottom, you can push it a little bit harder because that's where you're gonna kind of make the indication of bushes and whatnot. Each tree should be different, you know. Don't make every single tree look exactly the same. I guarantee if you go walk out in the woods or you go look somewhere in a park or something, every single tree is going to be different. The same thing you need to be doing when you're painting. Add some characteristics to your trees. Here I'm adding some bushes, kind of putting some grass on top of the rocks. That way it kind of really settle it into the painting. Using the knife to sharpen my edges, and then I'm kind of drawing sticks and twigs and everything. Now instead of it just being three trees, now you have a whole entire little forest on that rock right there. It really adds a lot of depth and character. I added a slight little bit of green and yellow on my brush and just adding a slight little highlight. This is how you make your trees look a little more rounded. It makes them look full and fluffy and just adds a lot of character to them. Add a little bit of highlight to the bushes, and that's pretty much that for that. Like I say, just light pressure and just let it work. Let it work. Time for my bravery test. Want to put a big tree on the left side, so figure out where you can put it and go straight down with it. Going to add a little foots. This color here was just all my dark colors, a little bit of green. Once you get
This side
once you
here, we're
figure
gonna
out
go
where you
ahead
want
and
it to
add some
go,
of that
just
dark
go for
color
it.
as
Like I
well,
said,
but
don't
we
be
won't
scared of
worry
it.
too much
Here
about
I'm just taking a
highlighting.
knife, and I know my shoulders in the way, but all I'm doing is just kind of rounding off the edges, kind of adding it, making it a little more thicker where I want it in pieces. I'm going to clean up the palette a little bit. Now we're going to add in some highlight color using bright red, some sienna, and a little bit of white. I'm going to leave that a little bit marbled, and I'm just going to touch, again, let the canvas take what it wants. You just kind of add in some bark indications. The low light side, all I'm doing is just adding that reflective water look by adding the blue. Now I'm taking my 2-inch brush, adding some bushes, just kind of touching here and there, just trying to add some little grassy things to my rock. Now I'm going to add a nice little tree limb on there. You have to thin down your paint a lot, so I'm going to put a lot of thinner on my palette, add it to my paint that I did with the tree, and this allows the paint to move really well over all that paint that you already put down on the canvas. Remember, a thin paint can go over a thick paint very easy. So that's what I'm just going with right here. Then I'm gonna add my highlight color and low light color on the branch. Only thing I really have left to do is add a few little leaves indications on this tree. Uh, Kind of a general idea. Whenever you're doing these kind of things, you want to make sure you're using colors that you use throughout the painting. You don't want to just throw a random color in all of a sudden. That's gonna mess you up. So I'm added some blue with my phthalo green, just kind of the same little highlight colors and low light colors that I've been having on the palette. You notice I just keep kind of touching each one, uh, just adding some nice little bushy things, little leaf indications. I'm gonna add the least little bit of my cad yellow, and I don't want to be super bright, so I'm really working this color into the brush. That way it mixes, it makes a nice pretty emerald green almost. I'm gonna touch a little here and there just to kind of where the sun would play at. And that's pretty much easy little way to do your tree right there. Add a couple little bushes, kind of push and play with that. Do that on both sides. Really hope that you like this painting. Just finishing it up now. Just gonna add a little bit of twigs here and there, a little bit of this and that. Uh, Let me know what y'all think in the comments. Do y'all rather this style? Do you like the old style where I just kind of freestyle it? I plan on still doing that on non-commissioned pieces, but these I like to be locked in. You know, I really want to take it serious. But anyways, go ahead, subscribe, like the video, comment, do all the things. Find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Thanks.